Deputy Minister. Thank you very much for agreeing to provide your insights for the GCSP audience today. We are honored of having you visiting our center. Your colleague, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov, was here a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke on the topic of strategic stability and arms control. Today, I would like to discuss with you a different topic. The Taliban takeover of Afghanistan has direct implications for the neighboring countries, for the countries in the region. And I would like to ask you today, what would be the Russian perspective on the situation in connection to the Central Asian states?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for this chance to come here again and to speak on important issues. The situation, as you described in Afghanistan, has quite a long-standing implications for the whole region and beyond. That's why we need thoroughly to analyze what's happened and maybe to make certain predictions for the future, how to address the new challenges. The fall of the Republican regime in Afghanistan and the rapid seizure of power became a serious destabilizing factor, not only for Afghanistan itself, but for the region as a whole. At present, the situation looks more or less stabilized, but the dynamics of its development is difficult to predict, and the possible projection into Central Asia needs additional, as I said, deliberations. In particular, among new challenges and threats which turn up is the flow of refugees from the territory of Afghanistan to neighboring countries, while creating a certain pressure on their domestic situation. Terrorists and other destructive elements can also infiltrate their territory under the guise of the refugees. And at least in Russia, we consider it's important the active efforts of the international community to facilitate their dignified, safe and sustainable return to their homeland. Yes, we have context with Taliban, and we use those established contexts, encouraging the new authorities in Kabul to a responsible civilized policy in return to an external player and civil population of their country. We note the efforts made by the new authorities aimed at stabilizing the situation, first of all political and military situation, and to a great extent there are certain achievements. At least the new government, interim government, was formed, which recently included some representatives of ethnic minorities. It doesn't mean it becomes more inclusive, but still it's a good step. The Taliban also announced their intention to hold general elections and called and exiled officials from the previous administration to return to the country. Work is underway to renew activities of government bodies, to create a Allegra army. The functioning of the Kabul airport has been re-established. However, we are still not in a hurry with official recognition of Taliban regime. We need to see how their promises made when they were coming to power are materialized on the ground. Unfortunately, there are still certain things which are not done, but we undoubtedly are interested in Afghanistan as an independent and, most importantly, peaceful country, a partner with whom one can negotiate. We proceed from the fact that at present the issues of humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan and post-conflict rehabilitation and the reconstruction are coming to the fore. taking account the difficult socio-economic situation in the country and the risks of aggravating the migration situation in the region. Even the large number of Afghans wishing to leave the country is necessary to prevent complications of the migration situation in the region, and we are not interested in the erosion of power in Afghanistan. This would create conditions for activation of extremist groups. We believe that the United States and its allies, which are responsible for their 20 years presence in the country, should bear the bulk of the corresponding costs of reconstruction. In a negative scenario of the development, the country's social and economic problems will become even more aggravated. According to the United Nations, today half of the Afghans need humanitarian assistance just to survive. Every third person is deprived of stable access to food. It's projected that by 2022, more than half of children under the age of 5 will experience severe malnutrition. Access of the population to basic goods and services is decreasing on a daily basis. And this is against the backdrop of a record drought and an approaching winter. Lack of funds in the treasury of Afghanistan is fraught with the collapse of the socio-economic environment, and it will be compensated by the growth of drug trafficking, of arms trade, smuggling, because now the Taliban needs money at any cost, and the West froze Afghan reserves in their banks. Together we should curb these tendencies by working with the key stakeholders of the World Bank for a stage-by-stage unfreezing of the Afghan reserves and restoration of progress through the World Bank and the IMF. In order to make this process transparent, the option of establishing a country trust fund under the United Nations with the involvement of credible NGOs and UN partner organizations could be considered. And we have such an experience in Yemen. Despite the radical political changes in the situation in Afghanistan, we believe that the mechanism of the expanded Troika, it's one of the negotiating format on this country, and the Moscow format, which also includes Kazakhstan, have not lost their relevance. In particular, its potential could be used to complete the process of intra-Afghan settlement and reconciliation and creation of an inclusive government that reflects the interest of all political forces of the country. In the future, we plan to lead to the convening of an international donor conference under the auspices of the United Nations to assist in the post-conflict reconstruction of Afghanistan. We believe that the deployment of the military infrastructure of the United States and NATO, as well as the Afghans from the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, cooperating with them on the territory of neighboring countries, primarily in Central Asia, is unacceptable. The activities of Islamic State remained a significant deteriorating factor in the degradation of the situation in Afghanistan, and we need to avoid such a scenario. Moreover, the leadership of this group does not hide their plans to extend their influence to the Central Asian states and then to Russia. There is information about attempts to unite Russian-speaking militants fighting in Afghanistan, including those who moved later from Syria and Iraq under the unified command of former members of the terrorist groups underground operating in the Northern Caucasus. At the same time, the leaders of terrorists are betting not so much on hostilities, aggravation, but on crisis, social and economic crisis, which is dooming in Afghanistan and could be caused in Central Asia. The problem of drug production and smuggling remains extremely acute. Afghanistan remains the biggest supplier of opiates in the world, about 90% of the global market volume. More than 2/3 of the Afghan's provinces are drug producing. The efforts of the previous government were clearly not enough to counter this threat. Now let's see how the Taliban will do it. And they have a positive experience in the past, and we may see how they can cope with this threat now. So, to conclude, you see how many challenges we now face. I mean international community, I mean the neighboring countries who surround this state, and of course the response to these challenges could be only collective, with participation of and coordination of the United Nations, of other international donors. But we don't have the right to leave this country alone, to leave this country isolated, to turn it again back to the black hole where all risks and threats are emanating from. So let's hope that in future we manage to properly address those threats and see Afghanistan, as I said, peace and prosperous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister.